This podcast is part of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts, visit red5network.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Come to you, as always, from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tolley, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Will. Will, how are you today?
Bright suns, everybody. I'm doing really well. I am just getting ready for my our Galaxy's Edge trip coming very soon. So, in fact, our next broadcast, I will be broadcasting from, somewhere very close to Batuu. So I'll be very excited. We're looking forward to it.
Right here, it feels like we're in Tatooine here.
I know. We've had a few hot days as well.
Oh, I think today I just heard my wife mention something about heat index of almost 110.
Well, I was this past weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. If you remember, I was telling you that I had a Star Wars yard sale.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned something very, very interesting that I'd love to share. And that is that people really like Star Wars.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness. I went around over the past year finding, and again, for those who know, listen to or watch my channel, Darth Tuba Star Wars Unboxing Show on YouTube, you know that I'm a collector. I have a lot of different types of things in the collection, but obviously a limited and finite amount of space. So, every so often I have to go through and find some things that maybe I no longer want or I think someone else would appreciate more at this point. And so over the year, I've been finding different things and I've been collecting them and putting them in boxes and putting the boxes in the garage. And then my plan was to have it set up along with some household regular yard sale stuff and, just put it out there and hopefully, there'll be some interest. Well, I decided to do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, mainly because it seems like during the week around here, things are a little bit more popular. And it was also 4th of July weekend. So I figured there'd be people that would probably be traveling. So we get to Thursday morning and I put everything out there. And within 2 hours, I had 6 tables filled with Star Wars collectibles. And a lot of them were loose and stuff I played with as a kid or whatever. And by the time I got to, 2.5 hours in, there was only 1 table left of stuff. So went the rest of the day. I had to tell people, sorry, we come back tomorrow when I have time to find some more stuff. And then I frantically on Thursday night looked in the collection for more things to be willing to part with. And then I did the same thing. Friday, repeat, same thing happened. All of it sold, and it wasn't cheap. I wasn't selling it for 50 cents. It was stuff selling for, reasonable amounts, fair, I thought. And then I was going to not do it Saturday because the weather wasn't looking good here for Saturday at first. But then apparently our local New Jersey radio station that broadcasts the entire state, one of the radio hosts lives in my town, saw my Star Wars sale sign, which I did a really cool black and yellow sign with black with yellow lettering with the font. And he put an article about it on the radio's website saying, and the sale's going through Saturday afternoon. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm having a sale Saturday.
I guess so.
So I had to go down into the basement again and find more stuff to put up there. And once again, a good chunk of it sold. So it was a very good sale. And I was excited about it. And now I have money to spend when we're down in Disney World. So there we go.
There you go.
But some of those things are going to be buying more Star Wars stuff to put in the collection. So there's that. But anyway, all right. So what's the topic today?
So today we are going to be looking at some of the myths and misconceptions around the Star Wars universe. Some going to be a little bit more serious. Others are just going to be fun in universe. Some ones. In fact, let's start with a kind of a fun one, kind of one that always gets the jokes. And this actually comes from a longtime listener. Probably one of our most loyal listeners. He goes by the Twitter handle of Rural Farm Boy.
Yeah, right, boy. Woohoo!
Oh yeah, we love Rural Farm Boy. But he asked the question of, and I wish I could actually find a way to get voicemail that he sent me, but basically it has to do with the myth or misconception or the idea that stormtroopers can't hit the broadside of a bantha. Because, I mean, if you watch A New Hope, the original Star Wars, Obi-Wan even makes comment about when they were looking at the Sandcrawler, and he says only Imperial stormtroopers are this precise when talking about the blaster points. But yet, then the joke becomes that they shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot, but can't hit. And there's all kinds of different fan theories about this. One is that Vader, they were being let go, so Vader didn't want them killed, so he told the stormtroopers to purposely miss. The other one was that Luke and Leia and Han were being protected by the Force. There's all kinds of different and then there's the ones that, Luke even makes the comment when he puts the helmet on, you can't see a thing in this helmet. And that's become kind of the joke of, oh yeah, someone puts the helmet on, like, you're right, you can't see anything in this helmet.
Well, I mean, even just after putting on a stormtrooper helmet, and let alone, and again, shout out to all those members of 501st who put on the entire outfit. That is a very challenging outfit to do anything in.
Yeah.
So, and even what's his name, Rios from Solo makes that comment when he's climbing out of the stormtrooper gear, the mud trooper gear.
Yeah.
Like, no wonder they can't shoot straight. It's like you can't.
Yeah.
See.
So it's become not. I don't want to say a self-fulfilling prophecy, but what was once just an inside joke with Star Wars fans has now in many ways become canon. I mean, even in Mandalorian, season 1 of Mandalorian, when he is talking with was it Renfield?
Yes.
And he said
Mayfield,
and makes the comment of him being a sharpshooter, and he says something about, well, that's not saying much. And
I wasn't a stormtrooper.
I wasn't a stormtrooper.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you got to talk about it in universe and out of universe. Okay, yeah. But I'm going to say one thing for out of universe, and it's just a general statement for all of the myths and misconceptions that we have, that we come up with when people are trying to explain the logic of it. Okay, it's like the story I told the other day when my students were watching Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Yes.
They had a hard time about grasping the fact that he dismantled an armored truck really fast, and I'm like, it's a living, talking hedgehog. Can we please just suspend our disbelief?
Yeah. Well, I gave the example in Obi-Wan, where they did something and everyone was like, well, why didn't they do this? And the answer is simple. Or why trying to come up with the logic behind it. I just said, because Star Wars.
And again, and this is the thing, if it doesn't resonate with you, if you're the kind of brain, like, there are people who cannot get past that. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that maybe you need to find another, maybe historical documentaries are really more your speed.
Yeah.
Something where you can find, or a historical movie, like something like Saving Private Ryan, that, or Schindler's List, or even to some degree Titanic, which, while a lot of it was made up, there was a lot of parts in it that were very accurate. You know what I mean? So that's kind of my take on that. So go watch those movies. If you want to try to fit that peg into the round hole that is Star Wars storytelling, all right, fine. But for some people, they just like to talk about it. I love the shirt I've seen, or the image, and I think it's on shirts, it's on mugs, it's on everything. I love it. It's one of the smartest things. It says a stormtrooper shoots a red shirt crew member from Star Trek. The stormtrooper misses, and the red crew member dies anyway.
So
I mean, every genre has their myths and misconceptions.
Yeah.
So
as far as in universe, one thing I can think of is, because there was this push to get as many stormtroopers as they could. Like, everything the Empire did was just numbers. Like, that's why the TIE fighter was so cheaply made. Wasn't because they were looking for the best starfighter they could. They just wanted to make something they could make easily, make cheaply, and put a butt ton out there. And just throw it in. The same thing with stormtroopers. So I think it could be just the fact that they're not really, your basic stormtroopers not getting the top of the line training. They're just like, throw the armor on, throw them out there, and you're cannon fodder.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Pawns go first, right?
Yeah, pawns go first.
Pawns go first.
this comes from someone in our own, the Red 5 network. And this is one that is, I think he kind of did it as kind of like a joke, kind of a haha, shots fired. He asked the misconception or myth, all Star Wars is good Star Wars. Would you consider that a misconception, or is that something that is more, like you said earlier, just based on opinion?
I think all Star Wars is good Star Wars in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I feel that there has not. Let me put it this way: there has not been a single thing that has come out that has the Star Wars label on it that didn't, that I didn't enjoy at least some part of.
Yeah.
And I speak of the holiday special, the Ewok movies, the Ewok and droid cartoons. Now, I will say, let's take those three things: the holiday special, the Ewok movies, and the Ewok and droids cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
It came out Saturday morning. Okay, each of those things I can watch with a nostalgic eye. Now, I will say this: I never actually watched the holiday special when it first came out. I didn't even know it was a thing. It was like 10 years later, and I was at a sci-fi convention, and there's all that. There's always that one guy or girl who's selling video. Well, it used to be video cassettes, and then it turned into DVDs of like all these weird. They just found all this weird stuff that you could not get anywhere else.
Right.
A lot of them had there was a lot. I don't know. There used to be a lot of big budget movies that the movie itself had different scenes, and you'd only see them when they were on TV, like some kind of an exclusive scenes that only existed on TV. That was a big one for Star Trek. Star Trek 2, I think, had all these different scenes. You could only find them if you watched the network version of it. So some guy taped it and edited it together with, to make the definitive Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan. And you could buy that kind of stuff. Anyway, so that's where I found the holiday special. Now, the holiday special, and we've talked about this in past episodes, it's not wonderful, okay? But it is interesting to get a snapshot of these actors back in the 70s, wearing their garb and, doing what they're doing. And then to also see this variety show concept try to get mashed up with Star Wars. And there's something fun about that. I mean, I love Art Carney. I love Harvey Korman because I love The Honeymooners and I love The Carol Burnett Show and all the Mel Brooks films that Harvey Korman was in. And I love Golden Girls with B. Arthur.
Yeah.
So I love that these actors are in this show and trying to insert themselves into the Star Wars universe at such a young time when Star Wars was not well known by the older generation. So to me, it was just kind of a fun romp in there. But there are still things that the whole itchy with the whole viewing thing with Diane, I just can't even, I always have to fast forward it. It's just too creepy. Now, as far as the Ewok movies, I mean, I do enjoy, I remember those I did see when they came out. And I do have a nostalgic eye and ear to listen to what the sounds, find the Ben Burt sound effects that they reused. There is an enjoyment there. Plus, as a collector, the droids cartoons came out with figures, as did the Ewoks. So that was like the last ditch effort of Kenner before they went into hiatus. So there are some things to enjoy. Everything else beyond that has been more to enjoy than not to me. But again, I'm not a person who, wants to analyze every little thing, wants to follow continuity, that includes books or includes comics or includes video games and get down into that minutia. So, I think it's myth. I would call it myth because I do think the true statement is all Star Wars is good Star Wars to someone.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe not to everyone.
Okay. Now, do you have any myths or misconceptions?
Yes, I do. And I think in universe, the myth and it's the myth of the Force and how the Force works. And we've talked a little bit about this, but, how does the Force work? And at first, when we're first watching the first 3 original movies, we're looking at it like it's some sort of energy field. That's all we hear. That's the only definition we get. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together. Very vague, right? Kind of like a life energy, okay? Kind of based on some Eastern religion, religious philosophy. I mean, that kind of thing. Then we get 20 years later, we get the whole science trying to explain it a little bit more.
Right.
And the internet, the very young internet, blew up about it with midi-chlorians.
Right.
And, and then that became something of a more of a scientific thing where it's actually like symbiotic relationship between microscopic organisms and everything and human beings and or just life and, more larger life forms, and how more midichlorians that live inside of you, the more force capabilities you would have. And then we go again 20 years later to the sequel trilogy, and they kind of ignore it again, or at least they just keep it more vague with just the force.
Yeah.
So, the myth kind of bounces around in universe, I feel.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but then fast forward again a couple of years to Mandalorian, and they're talking about, that's the whole reason Baby Yoda, Grogu, was being taken by the Empire. They talked about his M count, midichlorian count. So they went back. It's kind of like ping-ponging back and forth. And I wonder if that's not just, some people's science is other people's magic or mysticism.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And it could also be, in universe, it could also be that as the idea of the Jedi kind of, started to die out, and, the Empire was on the rise, that old knowledge became, the old knowledge of the midichlorian for the common person became more kind of forgotten, and the Force became something more mystical.
Right.
Because this was something from an older time, from a time before.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine that the whole midichlorian thing was a science because the High Republic and all the time in the time of the Jedi being prevalent, they had an organization in place that could identify Force users or people with high M counts, if you will, and they could take them and raise them and teach them the ways of the Force, and then, populate the Jedi that exists in the universe. Mm-hmm. But then once Order 66 happens, then the Jedi get risen to something more of myth. And that's another thing I love about the book of Obi-Wan. Sorry, Obi-Wan Kenobi series is that it kind of talks about that, and it talks about how people feel about Jedi, and there is almost a romanticism about like they are the heroes of the universe, that many people consider that, and the Empire is trying to suppress that. So, I think the whole idea of Jedi, even Rey, by the time we get to the sequel trilogy, Rey's like, I thought he was a myth. They talk about the legend of Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
And how it was a myth. So I can definitely see the Force and Jedi themselves kind of floating in and out of that myth.
Yeah. No, definitely.
I remember there were some stories in, I forget if it's all legend now, but it's either comics or regular books, novels, where there would be like an argument going on in a cantina somewhere, and somebody would see a Jedi sitting there having a drink, and they would call the Jedi over to help settle the argument. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they almost served, because I guess everybody knew that this Jedi could take everybody out in the room, or that's at least the impression they had.
Yeah.
So they felt that he would be a fair and unbiased referee, if you will. So another one I had was the whole idea of how many people, I don't know if this falls under myth or misconception, or both, but people in the universe, people in the whole universe and the galaxy far, far away, once Anakin turned into Darth Vader, how many people actually knew that Anakin was Vader? It seems to me that we have only a small few people. We started off with Palpatine. I mean, all right. Darth Vader became Darth Vader. He still looked like Anakin.
Yeah.
So you got to imagine that the 501st, his squad knew he was Darth Vader.
Yeah.
But a lot of other people that knew him as Darth Vader, like Palpatine told the people in Mustafar, all the separatist leaders, I'm sending my apprentice Darth Vader to join you. He'll take care of you or whatever. Right? And then Vader shows up and just kills him.
Yeah.
Now, maybe they all reached out to friends and family and said, oh, this Jedi named Darth Vader is going to come or this person named Darth Vader is going to greet us. The next thing you know, they're dead. So it becomes the mystery of Vader. But, whether he's Anakin or not, Anakin is Vader. I don't think a lot of people knew. I mean, Reva knew.
Well, Reva figured it out.
Right.
Like, as far as like who knew and who it was like,
the mystery became clear.
yeah. Definitely, as you say, of course, Palpatine knew. As far as how many members of the 501st, I think the initial 501st knew. As far as like once more people started joining the 501st and its ranks grew, that's a different question.
Right. But now,
because there's a scene in, and it's actually, this is a canon of one of the comics where the librarian, has to know.
Yeah.
She figures it out.
Right.
Because there's a scene where they're in the speeder above Coruscant. They've just captured her, and she turns to the other troopers and said, "You're hunting Jedi, but why are you letting a Jedi basically order you around?" And she drops the bomb that Vader is Anakin Skywalker. At which point Vader force pushes all the stormtroopers out of the vehicle.
Yeah, I wondered like how you just put up you raised an excellent point. Like if the based on like the Bad Batch and the end of the Clone Wars, and we see the Order 66 through the screen of the clones, right?
Yeah.
Through the view screen. They're just kind of going along doing their thing, and in Bad Batch too showed a little bit of this. And they said that once that Order 66 happened, it just like that chip just got activated. Right. And to them, if you were a Jedi, you are a traitor.
Yeah.
Well, did that also include? It had to include Anakin. I mean, it had to include Anakin. I mean, we're getting into a whole other subject here, but I want to talk about it. Because Anakin was still considered a Jedi, and it wasn't like Order 66 was every Jedi except for Anakin. No, Anakin, it was a part of that. The only difference is that Anakin was considered, I guess in Palpatine's eyes, was considered dead, and Darth Vader was what replaced him.
Yeah.
Even when once he chopped off Mace Windu's hand, and that was it. He had turned. He pledged himself to Palpatine. But anyway, so yeah, I wonder what that really means. I mean, if you were in a room full of clone troopers, even if they're the clone troopers that have sworn to follow Lord Vader, and someone tells them, he was a Jedi, right? He's Anakin Skywalker.
Well, they even tried using that logic in the final season of Clone Wars with Ahsoka.
Yes,
Rex tried using that, saying like, "Well, technically, she's not a Jedi because she left the Order."
Yeah, and you'll be committing murder of a civilian. Which I thought was a good. At least I'm glad they didn't just use that as a, oh well, okay, you can go. But it was a good way to stall.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good one. I wonder where. I mean, we don't have an answer. It's just but I mean, I remember the novelization of Revenge of the Sith. I remember the one big thing about that, and again, we might have mentioned this earlier, was that Anakin and Obi-Wan were like on the HoloNet, like on the version of TV, were considered superstars,
right?
Because they had. Every time they went out and won some battle, they put it on the HoloNets. Oh, the heroes of the Empire, Anakin and Obi-Wan. And I thought somewhere along the lines there was some stories that and again, this could be legend, so it would not have mattered, but that people understood that Anakin changed his name to Vader. And we're okay with it because of all the good Anakin did, or something like that. It's very weird. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know where that came from. I could be totally off the mark, but anyway, that's a good one. Do you have any other?
One, I have actually found an article. It's written by it's from the Washington Post, but it's written by a woman named Julie Turnock, who actually is from my hometown. Oh, okay. She went to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, but she has a list of Star Wars myths, 5 myths about Star Wars. Okay. And the first one is really interesting. Star Wars provided the blueprint for blockbusters.
No, that was Jaws.
Well, and she said that while it was an immediate sensation, it took 10 more years for people scrambling to formulate what made that movie just Star Wars so perfect. And it said you had a bunch of bombs that come out like Black Hole, Dune, Tron, all these movies that were big but just couldn't quite capture what A New Hope brought, what the original Star Wars brought.
Okay, I'm going to put a challenge on that, though. As much as you should put an article out there, but the term blockbuster, okay, where does that come from? It means that there are lines on the sidewalk that are basically, causing, there's so many people in line to see a movie that it's breaking the block. It's breaking the concrete. That's, which obviously doesn't happen, but that's where it really kind of comes from. So I really do believe that it was Jaws that kind of started the very, very first.
Yeah.
And then Star Wars kind of, was part of that.
Yeah.
But she's talking about like Superman was another one. I mean, that was a big one. And then of course Raiders came out after that. So yeah, there were a lot of copycats that wanted to capture that magic. And of course, Paramount wanted to, they were going to have Star Trek be a TV series. And then as soon as Star Wars came out, they were like, oh, let's make it into a movie, Star Wars motion picture, and then, you're right. Tron didn't come out till like 82, but these other ones. Yeah. So what other things did she say?
Well, one, she has that Lucas drew primarily on myths to create Star Wars. And she said while myths were a big part, she also drew on a lot of the pulp, the 1940s and 1950s pulp serials.
I think when it comes
Flash
to
Gordon and Buck Rogers and stuff like that. And in 1974, while pitching his original treatment for Star Wars, instead of going to mythology to describe it, he said it's 2001 meets James Bond in outer space. That was the initial pitch for Star Wars. Well,
I think that my take on that would be the design. I think he took
a lot from that. Yeah.
Well, no. The other way. Design, I felt like he took a lot from Flash Gordon. I mean, come on. I mean, right up until and Buck Rogers, right, including the serial.
Yeah.
Episode 1.
John Carter.
The whole, Well, a lot of people took from John Carter. So, the one I want to talk a little bit. Let's jump into a fun one for a moment.
Okay.
The infamous Stormtrooper bonk on the head.
Oh.
We're back to Stormtroopers.
Yes.
I mean, this isn't really there's not really a myth, but I think the myth part of it comes from, there's been a lot of myths rolling around, or urban legends, if you will, of who like that was. There's some guy who takes credit for it and says it was me. I'm the one who hit my head on it. He's gone on and been interviewed and everything, but then I hear it was debunked and it was somebody else, and it's been so weird. But you got to give Lucasfilm and George Lucas credit. They totally owned up to it, and they even put a bonk sound in. Like, it wasn't there in the original release. You just saw, there was just the Stormtroopers in the foreground were going ahead, and you didn't really look at the guy in the back. But then, with the umpteenth DVD release, or somewhere along the line, Lucas decided to put a little boop, and he went past it. And then he played homage to that, having like Jango Fett going up the ramp and hitting his head, and I think the Mandalorian even hit his head at one point. I mean, it's hysterical. What other ones do you have in that article?
There's a few are just ones like, obviously, like one of them is that most fans are young white men. I can already debunk. I think that goes along with a lot of a lot of people.
Where is that a myth? Like, did she write that in the article?
No, it's that people think that there's a conception that most Star Wars fans are white men of a certain age, but obviously that's not true. Like, that's a myth that people.
If my sale is any indicator, there are a lot of children and a lot of girls and a lot of different race, colors, everything that are Star Wars fans. And I think that to say that it's mostly the, one race or color or age is definitely a misconception. So,
oh yeah,
absolutely. Here's one. The talk about, did Lucas, it's more out of universe, did Lucas always have 3 trilogies planned?
Yeah, this is what I've heard. I've heard several different things about that. That he did. That he had the entire thing planned out. Yeah, and then I've heard people say like, no, he just had the one, and then when the original Star Wars was a success, then he wrote and came up with the rest of them.
Yeah, I just think there's been a lot of people kind of saying, I think he had an idea for I don't even know if he truly had, he had a thumbnail sketch. He had yellow pad of paper with a thumbnail sketch for 3 movies.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, then he started putting together a backstory, really as in a way to just kind of understand these older characters. And that became the genesis of the prequel.
Yeah. Well, I think when people say that, did he have everything planned out, was what they're really asking, did he have planned for Vader to be Luke's dad from the very beginning? I think that's what a lot of people are saying or was that just something that as the story went on, he began to flesh out the stories like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. Let's do that. Or was this something that was planned from the very beginning to do that?
My suggestion to everybody who wonders that is to read 2 things. The easy thing to do and the more harder thing to do. The easier thing to do, find on YouTube or someplace From Star Wars to Jedi, The Making of the Saga. Yeah. And it's the first 3 movies, the original trilogy. It's mostly, the making of all 3 movies, but mostly Return of the Jedi, because that was one that was just came out. It was only a few years later. And they had the most footage of behind the scenes from that one. And, but during it, there's a lot of interviewing with George Lucas. I mean, he is sitting there talking through a lot of different stuff. He's going through a lot of different aspects of the storytelling. And he lets out a lot of information. He gives out a lot of information about, some things. And it doesn't really lean one way or the other too much about whether or not he had a plan in place or not. But it does show his kind of insight, what he was thinking, his thought process. And then the other thing, which is a little bit harder, but I would recommend everybody read the late, great J.W. Rinsler books, Making of Star Wars, Making of Empire, Making of Jedi. Because those books are so finely detailed, and they include like good, bad, and ugly that goes into all of these movies. And they include the drafts, some of the drafts, or at least drafts of certain scenes and how things work. And I think when you read those books, you'll come to the conclusion, or at least you'll come to some level of understanding that, he had a thumbnail sketch idea. Just like, you got to remember that when they put these movies together, he was hiring artists, and artists were creating images out of nowhere. And he was getting inspired by that art. I mean, he had some ideas, but the artists like the Ralph McQuarrie, the Joe Johnston, and then later the Doug Chiang, the Ryan Church, these guys were coming up with these great images that became part of the storytelling. And there was so many things that didn't exist. Like, case in point, they wanted to put Asajj Ventress into one of the prequels, and it ended up getting cut and being used. Same thing with the Night Sisters; they ended up getting used in Clone Wars. So I think that while there might be a thumbnail idea, some basic thoughts, I don't think he had a full plan in place. And I think that people should be aware of that, because they tend to put Lucas on a pedestal. And I'm very appreciative of George Lucas, the man, the director, the creator, the maker. But I also feel like J.J. Abrams and the whole team behind the sequel trilogy have done quite a few of the same things that George Lucas did. George just answered to himself. That was the only difference. So. Yeah.
And that's one thing that this is before your tenure on here, that we talked about, that with the prequel, with the prequel trilogy, George had no, like in the original trilogy, because George was a young director, he was still kind of relatively somewhat unknown at the time. He had a few movies out. People were more likely to, when he come up with a crazy idea, to say, let's tone it back, George, let's do something else. Whereas when he was the prequel, it was George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars. And he even said himself that he had too many people not wanting to tell him no about stuff, because it was George Lucas. one thing, and this kind of ties back to one of our original thoughts that we had here, is the idea that the original version of Star Wars is the best version. Let me say, the non-specialized edition is the best version, and the special edition added nothing of importance to the movies.
That's a myth or misconception.
Misconception. I put it as a misconception.
I agree.
That it added nothing to, none of the special, none of the added scenes or extra special effects added anything, and that you have to watch the perfect pure edition of the original trilogy for it to be.
I have not watched the original trilogy since 1997. January of 1997.
Right.
I have a version. I know I have a tape version on tape, which of course I don't have a way to watch tape right now. But I have a DVD that came with that one box set of the trilogy that they took the laser disc or something and they just transferred it to DVD. Don't get me wrong. I would not, if I was going to see a movie theater and going to the movies and it was going to be, if they decided, I don't know if I would buy it again. I might buy a original version if they made like a super HD version of the original and they remastered it. I'd probably get it, or watch it on, if they put it on Disney Plus, because right now that's pretty much, I don't buy movies anymore. I just subscribe to Disney Plus.
Yeah, I mean, and
I definitely don't think that it's. I think
no, and for me, there are certain scenes that actually add more.
Jabba scene. It was so great. I mean, I know CG Jabba isn't all that great, but I appreciate the original that they put in there. I appreciated that and the efforts that they've made since to try to make it better. I just think that the idea of when there are certain creatures, even now, the latest, the twins from Book of Boba Fett, whom I feel like that is the foremost best version of two Hutts together that we've seen so far. But I still don't think they hold a candle to the original Return of the Jedi. Yeah. In terms of realism and being able to see it. I think they're getting better, and I think they'll continue to get better.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the storytelling that was going on there. I appreciate that you got to see Jabba. You got to understand what, the threat that Jabba was to Han. It wasn't just some, flighty thing in the back of somebody's mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
And one scene that I think that they added, where it's in the movie, but they added stuff to the scene to make it more, was the scene in the Death Star where Han runs down the corridor. He's trying to do, and then the original one, he just runs into like a handful of stormtroopers and runs back. Well, the way they shot it, the way they do it now, where he turns around, it's an entire platoon, and you see the AT-ST walkers sitting there, and makes it like okay.
Yeah.
It adds a little bit more. It makes it even more funny, where he turns the corner and sees like, oh, nope.
Not doing that. Nope.
No.
And then Empire Strikes Back, I thought that there was that little scene between, you just saw Vader. I mean, it wasn't much, but it was Vader returning back to his Star Destroyer. There was a little more, I mean, I just thought it added to the ambiance, the cool
and
factor.
Even changing, I thought it was a good idea to change, when they redid it, to have Ian McDermott be the Emperor instead of and no offense to the guy who did it before, but it just fit more into like a continuity, like, okay, this makes more sense. And
I think that, well, George, as I said, George has made the comment that my movies don't get released, they escape. And that was the way it was always done. And, when George got to the point where he was a corporation, basically, and he could do what he wanted with his independent films, he decided he wanted to tinker with them and do something with that. Now, there's many that believe that when you take a movie and you put it out into the public, it becomes the public. Okay? And it becomes theirs. And to tinker with it and change it up and not make what you originally did available. I think that's what upset some fans more. Not so much that he did a special edition, but that he wanted that to be the final finito. That's the version I want to do. And I can understand some people getting aggravated with that. At the same time, I feel like it was his sandbox, and he do what he wanted to do with it. And if you don't like it, well, then go out and make your own movie, and and put it out there, and then change it up the way you want to change it. He was just not happy with the way the technology was able to catch up. He wasn't happy with. There was a lot of things in his career that he was pushing the envelope on, and some of the things were very innovative at the time and still hold up today. Other things were kind of innovative at the time, but got things like some of the early CG work with the creatures and stuff have really improved since then. But you needed that to get to where we are. So I appreciate that. That's a part of it too. So I understand it, but I also feel like again, however Star Wars resonates with you is completely fine. And I do hope for those fans that Disney does release. I mean, I've heard rumors that they're going to release an original, untouched. I think because not so much the special edition, but because there's been like 3 or 4 other editions after that. Like even that Emperor scene you mentioned was not until the Blu-ray release, I think, right? And then and the Vader as he threw him over, which I get. It didn't take anything away from me, but if it would be nice if for the people who just want that original version, for them to release something, even to put something on, maybe even just put something on streaming. Heck, if you put that on Disney Plus and a nice HD version and never made it available any other way, you'd probably get more subscribers. So, but I agree with you that that is a misconception. What else we got?
You know what? I'm thinking this might be a little bit of a shorter episode this week. Because I'm kind of, I think we might just wrap things up here.
That's fine. I mean, I think it was a cool topic. It doesn't have to be too long, but I think that
I know you got a long trip ahead of you tomorrow.
Yes. Oh, you know it. Yes. I'm actually taking 2 days, but we're going to try to drive most of it tomorrow. Which will be about 12, 13, 14 hours, and then do a short trip the next day. So we'll see what happens. But all right.
Well, why don't you tell the fine folks out there where they can find you at?
Okay. Well, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I am currently running a YouTube channel called Darth Tuba Star Wars Unboxing Show, and you can find it. Just do a search of Darth Tuba on YouTube, and you should find it. And you can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at Darth Tuba Star Wars Unboxing page on Facebook, and you can email me DarthTuba77 at gmail.com.
All right. As for us right here, you can email us at warthestars1 at gmail.com, or you can go on Twitter and check us out there at warthestars1. We do a lot of fun stuff there. We are, of course, a part of the Red 5 Network. Go to red5network.com for more information on all the shows on the Red 5 Network. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/War of the Stars, or go to spreadshirt.com and just search War of the Stars there. That should take you to it. That's about it. I can't think of anything else. So, with that being said, remember, this isn't just my Star Wars. This isn't just your Star Wars. It's our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
Till the spire, everyone.